it's probably dirty too. I mean,
yeah, you're just generating electrodes to hydrolyze the water. Well, welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. Remember, out there, our beautiful audience, amazing audience. Of course, they are so well informed and they ask such great questions, which of course we return on Fridays in the firing line. Today we have a special guest, probably one of the most informed and amazing people on earth in terms of the issue of dirty electricity. That's the title of his book, Dr. Sam MILHAM. And Dr. MILHAM is still traveling the country, recently doing some major assessments of some of the largest solar installations in the world here in California. Dr. Sam, you wrote the book Dirty Electricity, and you've literally shown that going right back to even DC electricity with the brushings that were put there by Edison, because he was into DC, it was Nikola Tesla that developed AC power, that dirty electricity is basically the cause of many of the illnesses of the end of the 20th century. In fact, the whole 20th century. The fact is that the explosion of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, dementia, many other illnesses directly linked to electricity as a stressor of cells. If you look at cells under electron microscopy, you see the neuropore close. You see enzyme activity. We recently talked about that paper that's been published in the National Library of Medicine with a bunch of references dealing with gene SNPs and polymorphisms. Some of the ones that I've discovered just by clinical experience are glutathione methyltransferase 1, catecholol methyltransferase, and other enzymes tied directly to glutathione peroxidase activity, basically protective. You see DNA breaks and micronuclei in the extracellular space virtually identical to Chernobyl or Fukushima. So on electron microscopy, you see DNA adducts like 8-hydroxy-2'-deoxyguanosine, T-bars, and other DNA adducts. It's virtually identical, the damage, to radiation. And what's happened is these stressors push people over the edge. So if you're unborn in the utero, or you're an elderly person or person on the edge of developing illness, it's going to push you over the edge. And I see this as being a major catastrophe. The cell phones are more and more powerful. More cell towers are up everywhere, including church steeples and schools. We see the spread of switching mode power supplies. We now have the smart meters everywhere, which are like having 100 billion birds chirping in the same cadence and frequency, which the Scots found out 300 years ago. If you walk in cadence over a bridge, you'll rip it apart, all the rivets, because the giant waves generated will rip the bridge apart. Well, the same thing happens with cell membranes, cytostructural proteins in the cell, and enzymes, which are hydrogen bonded. Tell us about your latest exploits.
oh well, I don't know if they're exploits, but it's just. Well, the last thing I did just a couple of weeks ago was I had testified in court for a woman who was being sued by a pump company. They put she lived in Yakima, Washington, and I visited her first time last summer, and she's a 400-foot deep submersible pump on her property, and it wore out, and her neighbors share the pump. There's 3 families plus her that get their water off this pump, and the other 3 decided to go with a fancy variable speed drive pump made by Yaskawa, which is a big pump manufacturer, and installed by a company out there. Well, anyway, the minute they turned the thing on, she just got dreadfully ill. She spent her afternoon on the toilet and vomiting and headache, ringing ears, a whole schmear. She knew right away it was that because she was there when they put the thing in, and so she moved out to slept in her pickup for a couple of weeks, and then her dog and her cat got sick to the point of death. Being an animal lover, and she moved into a motel down in town away from this, and called me. She got well. The animals got well once they're out of there. Well, I measured the place, and it had the worst dirty electricity I'd ever seen. Every time the pump came on, Stetzer's meter read 20,000 at the pump house, about 5,000 in her kitchen.
You're talking about the Stetzer meter, right, which picks up the low-frequency transients.
It picks up DVDT, the rate of change of voltage with time, and is basically driven by the high-frequency transients. So anyway, she had that spade, and the thing that was really sinister was she had a transformer right outside her garage that, and so I tapped it, and but the utilities are dumping about 80% of the return currents into the ground, so I hooked onto the ground rod underneath the transformer, and I stuck a screwdriver for a ground probe about 40 feet away, and I had a wire between the ground and the probe, and I hooked my oscilloscope on it, and I got up to 20 volts of this filthy stuff, dirty stuff in the ground. And, it's not going to stop at the 40 feet. It's going to run through the neighborhood. And
exactly.
She's got a 200-tree orchard. She noticed over that year, going back and forth to water the place, every time she got in and near the place, she got sick. And people that were helping her water got sick. She noticed that the apple crop was small in size compared to other years. And remarkably, there's absolutely no bird predation. The birds ate a lot of the stuff. And once this dirty stuff was running through the ground, into the trees, and into the environment, the birds avoided it like the plague.
Wow.
So anyway, so as I went back the other day to testify for her, she lost the case, of course, small claims court. They said she had to pay for this thing that drove her out of her house. And I mean, she's a waitress, and she saved up her life savings and had a nice house out in the country with an orchard that she planted herself. It was her income, and so now she's trying to sell a place. Well, that was the last thing I did. Before that, in California, I noticed that San Diego Gas and Electric is putting up metal power poles to replace the wood ones. And
exactly, yeah. And what came out of that?
I measured a couple of them, and the whole pole was acting as a conduit for the dirty electricity, the return currents to run into the ground, and then they also have a dedicated ground at the base of these things. And so, and I find really high voltages, and I don't know what the amperages are, but they got to be bad. The other bad news is that these big solar arrays I've looked at, I find out that they're inefficient as hell. The so-called state-of-the-art ones with the concentrating solar, their arrays are about 20% of the time are down, not working. And the big ones, the big straight photovoltaic cells, where they've got like a million, they got more than a million cells on the ground. They put out super dirty electricity. So I happened to catch it afternoon, and as the sun went down, the sine wave on my oscilloscope got increasingly bizarre, and the oscilloscope gives you a measure of harmonic distortion or electrical pollution. You should get a nice smooth sine wave. This thing had notches in it, looked horrible, and the harmonic distortion was approaching 100%.
Wow.
You just don't see any places. What's really sad is I contacted the generator, the people that were making it. I contacted the utility that was buying the electricity, and I also contacted the IEEE committee that mandates the harmonic distortion limits, which are like 5-6% usually.
Right.
And I got no answer from anybody, of course.
Of course, it's obvious.
Of course, they don't want to hear the bad news. But anyway, the other really bad thing about the big solar arrays, they look like lakes, and they take a terrible toll on waterfowl and other birds that are attracted to water, and they pick up the corpses every morning at these things, and there's some endangered species. It's right on the flyway,
So in other words, from above in the air,
yeah, when they're flying by,
they
they
look like
think
water.
this is a lake, and they fly down, they break their necks, and so they find all these shorebirds and waterfowl attracted to this, and they just don't make it.
Wow, that's scary. Amazing. Wow. When we come back, any questions you have about dirty electricity, we have the expert here, Dr. Sam MILHAM. 800-259-5791. Stay tuned. Call in, please, if you have any questions on dirty electricity, smart meters, etc. Back in a moment. Welcome back, and the number to call in if you have questions for Dr. Sam MILHAM is 259-5791. Call in live. If not, then if you want your answers answered on Friday when you call in or email the answers to Michelle, and she'll try to put them in our stack. But I want to call and ask our expert, Dr. Sam. You mentioned some really horrid things about their solar towers, and there's several kinds. Ones that have a Fresnel lens that use a technique, and most of these have major problems with tracking the sun. The second thing is that they look from the air, as you mentioned, like a lake to birds, so the birds fly down and break their neck. Or if they're the new solar towers that have these solar collectors that are basically a concave lens mirror system, they actually create a super high intensity light, and the birds, literally, as they fly through these light paths, they actually can't see it, and then all of a sudden they're on fire. Their feathers go on fire, and they literally are, they call them, what do they call them, flamers? Or Streamers. And so these birds are flying along perfectly unaware that they're soon going to be on fire in a matter of seconds, and they just literally fall to the ground dead. And then, of course, we have these high-speed wind turbines traveling at 200 cycles per second with these giant blades that could be anywhere up to 60 meters long, and they're flying through the air, and they just chop the heads right off the birds or chop them in pieces. It's mind-boggling how dangerous these wind turbines are for our flying fowl friends. So
and they put them in they're building them in passes, where there's lots of wind, and they're just decimating the birds on the flyway. The northern birds fly south, and they return north in the wintertime, and they've got to negotiate these fake lakes that are solar, and the turbines, the tip speed's like a couple hundred miles an hour. They don't do that many cycles a second. They just do like one cycle, two, maybe. They don't cycle at 200 cycles a second. You wouldn't see them.
No, 200 cycles per minute, right?
Well, I don't know. No, it's the tip speed is hundreds of miles an hour.
Oh, but the tip speed. But we're talking about the speed of these blades. When you talk about the size of them, is enormous. We're talking about
747 will fit across the spread of them. If that's right,
I would imagine some of them are actually hypersonic. The tip of the blade is actually traveling it beyond the speed of sound.
Well, another thing that people don't realize is they put out an infrasound, a real low-frequency sound, up to 3/4 of a mile. It makes people really sick. And a woman wrote a book. A doc wrote a book on that, called wind turbine syndrome.
Oh, really? What was the name of the doc that wrote that wind turbine syndrome?
Yeah, the electrical part of it's, I think, much worse than.
Who wrote that?
This gal, I forget her name. She's up in.
But if you Google the name wind turbine syndrome, you're going to find it.
Exactly.
Infrasound, by the way, is lower than the frequency you can hear, but it affects biological systems.
Yes, it does, for sure. And they also create flicker, which drives some people nuts, and especially if you're epileptic.
You get brain entrainment activity, which happens. Wow. So
we're messing with our environment on a big scale, and if you look at the California public utility rules, or most other states have these too, there's a prohibition for using the earth as a major return for the currents that are delivered to your house, and yet they all do it. And they're up to like 70-80% of what's generated and delivered is returning through the earth. And the first people to pick up problems were the dairy farmers, because the cows are standing out in the pasture and getting the stuff. And Stetch has got some wonderful movies showing how the cows will kick and try to avoid what they're feeling when the oscilloscope shows a peak of stuff coming through.
Right. So in other words, the cow's behavior, and this is was it Bob Stetzer?
Dave Stetzer.
I'm Dave Stetzer. Yeah, who made the Stetzer meter to measure these transient lower frequency things, and then they have capacitor to pull them out of the electrical power.
They sure as heck work. What's amazing is I wrote this up in my book. I had a school where the kids had classic ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and the school was right near like 40 feet from the base of a cell tower. Can you imagine that? They put cell towers on school campuses, and every firehouse in San Diego County's got a goddamn pardon me, has a cell tower on it, and I've measured in the sleeping areas.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's a good idea for firefighters who are supposed to be alert to be zapped by that, because we know that in the mouse experiments, if you do a maze experiment with a mouse and zap them with Wi-Fi or high-energy cell tower frequencies, they don't lay a permanent memory trace. It's impossible for them to learn.
Yeah, well, the kids weren't learning for sure, and the teacher was ready to quit. So I gave her I put the filters in one night. The room was on a Friday night. The room was just had really high levels, and we brought them down to 30, which is 5 filters for this one classroom. And I didn't tell her why or what I was doing, and except that they were there. And she called me next week and said, "My God, the kids are perfectly behaved." She'd never seen such a change in behavior. Except on Wednesday, she said they regressed. But I said, "What's different about Wednesday?" She says, "Oh, that's library day." So the kids went out to a different part of the school and got bad again. But she was smarter than I was. What she did is she pulled the filters out and put them back in and timed how long it took. And within an hour, within 45 minutes to an hour, she could turn the kids on and off in terms of their ADHD behavior, which just is amazing, you know.
Yeah, that's very scary. It basically means that they have hacked the frontal cortex and the behavioral areas and the basically called the reptilian brain, that drives behavior of human beings, and they've hacked it. And this means that human behavior is now constantly impinged, either purposefully or non-purposely. We know in the battlefield they have frequencies that can completely scramble. They call them poppers at Fallujah and Najaf, and they used infrasound and pulse magnetic fields, and they could make people literally lose control of their biological functions. So they have a mother walk with her child directly into a line of fire, and they had swords or operational ground-based robots. These are ground-based, not drones that are airborne. And the robot would lock onto them, hit them with a friend or foe ping, and if they didn't show a positive response to the ping with a dog tag, they would kill them with a headshot 2.5 miles, either with a steerable bullet, a directed energy weapon, or a taser bolt.
Wonderful, but they're still winning a war over there. But these kids, 7% or 8% of the kids in this country now take Ritalin, and Japanese and others have shown that there's a persistent change in phenylethylamine, which is a neurotransmitter level in kids in kids who suffer this ADHD. So I think what happens with in 45 minutes when you put the filters in, what it does is it improves the PEA level, phenylethylamine level, and as well, Ritalin does that too. Wow. But anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're messing with our kids, we're messing with their learning, and with Wi-Fi in schools is an anathema, and Wi-Fi anywhere is an anathema. And
I tell people,
lights are bad, and the one appliance I find that's the worst in the houses are the DECT phones, DECT.
The other one I found the other one I've investigated recently and personally removed one was one of these electromagnetic induction stovetops.
Oh, there.
They're number 2 after smart meters. I think even above the DECT phones.
It's time to be free. What a beautiful world this will be. A sudden change in the wind. The day grows dark as ominous clouds move in and lightning begins to carve arcs in the sky. And you realize you are not prepared.
I'm telling you to take cover.
The number of intense storms is increasing exponentially in the U.S. Tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding, and droughts are happening with greater magnitude and frequency. If you are choosing to rely on the government to save you,
and no one's coming to help them,
you could be dead wrong. The first step towards self-reliance in the face of disaster is a visit to MyPatriotSupply.com. There you'll find the absolute best prices on storable foods, non-GMO seeds, emergency water filtration devices, and so much more. All orders over $49 qualify for free shipping in the lower 48. Visit us online or call 866-229-0927. That's 866-229-0927 and speak to one of our preparedness advisors today. Remember, before it's time to survive, it's time to prepare. MyPatriotSupply.com.
Today is an important day. It's your day to be ready, take care of your family, and buy your emergency food supply from the Freeze Dry Guy. Because today, the Freeze Dry Guy introduces our Mountain House and Packaway 1-month food supply. Today, get the Freeze Dry Guy's 30-day premium unit, normally $364, sale priced at $263. Save $101. Buy 2 cases, normally $727, sale priced at $506. Save $222. Or choose 3 30-day premium units, normally $1,091, now only $748. Save $343 from the Freeze Dry Guy. These premium units are packed with the highest quality Mountain House entrees, meats, vegetables, and Packaway brand freeze-dried pineapple and dehydrates, such as milk, ABC stew, and rolled oats. 289 half-cup servings. Go to freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. Free shipping to the lower 48. Hurry, our Mountain House and Packaway 1-month supply sale ends soon. So call now, 866-404-3663.
If you need to say happy birthday, happy anniversary, thank you, or simply I'm thinking of you, ProFlowers.com is the key. ProFlowers has stunning bouquets, like the best-selling 100 blooms for $19.99. Plus, ProFlowers will include a glass vase for free. Sending someone a wonderful surprise of beautiful flowers sent fresh from the fields is easy. Choose the bouquet you like, pick the delivery date, and each order is 100% guaranteed. Plus, all bouquets from ProFlowers are guaranteed to last at least 7 full days. Beautiful, fragrant flowers, picked fresh and sent to your loved one for lasting enjoyment. To get this incredible savings and send someone 100 gorgeous blooms with a free vase for $19.99, go to ProFlowers.com. Click the blue microphone in the top right corner and enter code PLOW. That's ProFlowers.com. Click the mic and enter code PLOW.
There are many things the human body can do very well, but maintaining the proper pH level isn't always one of them. That's where AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops can make a world of difference. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps your body do what's natural. Just a few drops a day helps rid your body of harmful waste and acid while promoting health and restoring vibrance and energy. Alkalizing boosts your immune system and can help fight headaches, irritability, cramping, and insomnia. Alkalizing also helps the body fight depression and even bone loss. To learn more about the importance of alkalizing and how you can find life-changing and vital balance, please visit AlkaVision's brand new website at alkavision.com. Same great products, but now easier to use and more informative than ever before. To get your very own Plasma pH Drops for just $29.95, call 800-518-7615 or visit alkavision.com. That's ALKA Vision.com. Alkalize your body and supercharge your health at the new alkavision.com.
We are America's largest independently owned communications network, GCN.
Active than they thought initially, and they should have been radioactive hazmat suits instead of walking around doing sampling. Welcome back, and Dr. Sam, let's pose a couple questions here. Let's just theorize. It's not to say 2014, it's 2034, 20 years from now. I've asked this of a number of doctors, including Dr. Bernhoft, who's also a electrical expert. He was former president of the Academy of Environmental Medicine. I've asked this of Dr. William Ray, who also has a great deal of expertise in electro pollution. You consider yourself and people like Dr. Ole Johansson some of the top in the world. I don't think the human race is going to tolerate 20 years more of rising electropollution, nanoparticles from near space in the upper troposphere used to geoengineer the climate and trigger off geotectonic or earthquake or weather weapons, which now there's no such thing as normal weather. I don't think the human race and epigenetics can tolerate radioactive radiotoxins from Fukushima, or if they hit the Bushehr reactor or just proliferate nuclear reactors, because they all vent off tritium, which is a DNA intercalator that slides the codons of DNA over, and they all release thorium and other isotopes. But all these plants and these new systems of power control, such as the smart meter systems that have set up these smart grid, It turns out that the frequency on the Zigbee network to control the home appliances, which now, by the way, they're even before the full Zigbee network is turned on so they can switch off your washer and dryer in Europe and Sweden. We talked to Ole Johansson last year. He had a report of a lady who was told after her washer dryer turned off to call the utility. When she contacted the utility, they told her she couldn't operate her washer dryer until after midnight because it was off-peak power. And they can turn it off. Turns out the frequency they're using is the same frequency as a microwave frequency, which literally tweaks water to generate thermal energy. So basically it turns your kitchen and your home into a microwave. I mean, I don't know if this could be just considered stupid or evil, but they try to always tote out these utility commissions thermal energy information, which is 25 years out of date, when all of the latest research, including the Bioinitiative report, indicates that non-thermal scalar radiation in DNA breaks and changes in enzyme induction activity and breakdowns in the blood-brain barrier, all of these things, including these gene activation effects that we can now measure specific markers of neurotransmitters and oxidative markers, etc., it indicates that the exact opposite is true, that there's no such thing as a safe limit of electricity, that there's no such thing as electricity in one form or another which carries information or frequency that can't do literally the same kinds of DNA and cell damage as radiation that's ionizing like Fukushima or nuclear plants. I don't think human biology is going to tolerate it. I think 20 years from now, if we don't stay this mess, it's going to be very hard for people to reproduce or have normal biology. The cancer rates are going to go skyrocket. The number of people with mental illness and brain problems like ADD is going to be enormous. And I think our society, suicide rates, I think that our society is doomed. And unless we start facing the music, and honestly, the doctors that consider themselves MDs that are out there, the white-coated I call toxic docs that are uninformed, they should have their licenses stripped from them because they really don't know what the hell they're doing. They're giving toxic drugs. Most of them don't even read their literature, that half the drugs at least are so dangerous they should never be given. Another half of what's left should be only given under extreme circumstances for rescue of people, and only temporarily. And then on top of that, they have no understanding of environmental toxicology of any kind. Electrotoxins, radiotoxins, heavy metals. They don't even know that heart disease is tied to heavy metals and free iron. They don't know that when you expose someone to stress, you're going to turn and increase the risk of type 1 and type 2 diabetes. They have no idea how this mechanism works when you can measure people's cortisol level and see their stress. Their body says, what the heck's going on? And you check their cortisol levels and you find it in orbit. So tell us, where do you think this is going?
Well, I think it's not going in good directions. I think ADHD and hyperactivity in kids is going up. Autism is going to be going up. The cancer rates are certainly skyrocketing. And, and people don't realize that this ADHD, this dirty electricity business, the high-frequency transients and harmonics, it's not just the cancers, it's diabetes, it's suicide, it's heart disease, and it's all stress-related. Selye was right when he wrote this business.
Hans Selye's work. Yeah, the final common pathway.
I went back and read it. And that's how it works. I got a couple papers out that just testify to this, and nothing's going to turn this business around until some successful lawsuits are brought against utilities and against the cell phone companies, because the bottom line is what's driving it. They're smart people, know what's going on, but
the biggest one to knock off.
We can't get the word out. I mean, I've had people driven from their homes, people killed, and you can't get attorneys to testify because the utilities got deep pockets, and so do the cell phone companies.
What we're going to do is a little unique. We're going to actually I'm going to file personally a federal class action against San Diego Gas and Electric. And I'm filing it in federal court, and we're going to try to structure it in such a way it doesn't get turfed out. Because the first thing is they rise up in objections and try to say, you don't have jurisdiction this, you don't have standing that. And if we can survive the initial onslaught and get the lawsuit moving forward, Jonathan Emore's group of 5 attorneys in Phoenix, Arizona is considering the idea of picking it up and converting it to a federal class action suit. When it's converted, it basically doesn't become my suit anymore. It becomes a national suit where anybody can attach to it through this legal group. And whether it's a utility in Tennessee or Michigan, we wanted to also have this as a boilerplate for other countries, whether it's Ireland, where we've talked to Mr. Weigel there, or to Ole Johansson, where they haven't filed a federal suit yet, even in Sweden, where the original research over the last 50 years has been going on with Ole Johansson's group at the Karolinska. Now, it turns out lately he's had some flack from the new president of Karolinska, who doesn't really like the idea of them pointing out electro pollution, even though they have some of the best occupational worker health protection laws in the world. They're terrified of the fact that their smart meter system, which has been set up across Sweden, is toxic to people. It's toxic to the environment and to bees, so they can't navigate back to their nest or their. And as a result, we're literally seeing we're going to be moving to what I call the class of food called the gruel class, where if it's not pollinated, it's going to taste like gruel. And I don't think our civilization's ready for a famine induced by toxic pollution with neonicotinoid pesticides, toxic electropollution, and scalar radiation, and also ultraviolet light, which is increasing because of nanoparticles in the upper ozone layer used to steer weather and to create a, quote, final shield against incoming nuclear missiles, which I know personally was first-class information because I had security clearance at the Q level at U.S. Space Command Strategic Defense Star Wars as one of their doctors in the mid-'90s. So this isn't second-hand, this is first-hand. So what we have to understand is that the situation is beyond dire. It is cataclysmic. And the problem is that I got a call this morning, for example, from Mark Gaffney, who's trying to collaborate the Shanksville, Pennsylvania action of a cruise missile, and he wanted to know if space technology was available to image a cruise missile launching that may have taken over the Shanksville airplane and blown it to bits. And I said, of course, we've had that up for a long time. The fact is, we've been doing lots of things that are environmentally and ecologically cataclysmic. And first-hand discussions, even with Dr. Isley, physicist at the World Constitution Parliament Association, which is an arm of the United Nations, who was planning geoengineering the planet, literally to sink the carbon dioxide to the bottom of the oceans with iron ore at the equatorial level of the oceans, and to also change the upper atmosphere to deflect coronal mass ejections and to protect the Earth from a major CME using nanoparticles, and also to steer weather, etc. These people are crazy, and they put nanoparticle thorium, barium, and aluminum, and strontium, and they're all paramagnetic, and they're doing this to create an interferometry field to steer storm cells and to create geomagnetic effects that can trigger off earthquakes and volcanism. So we're surrounded by, now they've turned even the air itself into a plasma, which makes us all in danger. All in danger, plus the heavy metal exposure. It's mind-boggling. Back in a moment with Dr. Sam Milham. He's going to have the show next. Yeah, I wanted to... 800,000 deaths in 5 years. Welcome back, and Dr. Sam, I had a little rant there. It's time for you to kind of lay it out as to where we're going in the next 25 years. I, to be honest with you, I like to be optimistic, and I know we can find solutions technically to these things. One of them is the idea of a chloroplast-style system that generates hydrogen directly, and they use hydrogen for your fuel for cars and everything. I think we need to realize that these solar and wind farms are dangerous as hell. The utilities are getting away with not properly grounding to the electricity feedback, so they're creating dirty electricity and dumping it in the ground, which is affecting people. It's, by the way, already against laws, so you don't have to create a law to actually stop it. You just have to enforce the laws that are there. But I don't think people realize what's the toxicity in their home. They don't know how to go around with meters. That's why we have our expert talking about the different meters. Emil de Toffel from Less EMF, we have a weekly show talking about that for at least a half an hour, about how they should go around with their Stetzer meter, their gigahertz solution, looking at their smart meter, their spectral analyzer with their magnetic and electrical fields, and hook it up with an oscilloscope to their laptop. As they go around with their triaxial magnetometer and other testing equipment, they start to realize, oh my gosh, my home is a cesspool of electropollution. Besides the things like Fukushima dumping radioiodine and strontium-90 and cesium-137 now, which now we're a cesium-137 test site here in Vista, California. Where's it all going?
Well, let me just add one meter to that. Get a $15 AM portable radio, AM/FM portable radio, tune it to AM off station. It's one of the most sensitive measures of detectors of electrical pollution you'll find.
By off station, you mean just off the station, just
well, if you're in a bad enough environment, it'll block out all the stations. But I turn it between stations. And
okay.
If you have a dirty electricity signal, it's going to just go. You get that right away. You can test it with your microwave oven or your compact fluorescent light or regular fluorescent light, and it picked up your induction stovetop, and it'll pick up.
Oh yeah, you told me to. In fact, before I got my fancy equipment, you told me to turn it off the station. I have a portable AM/FM radio. That's one of these fancy radios that you can crank and so on.
Yeah,
and I walked out within 10 feet, turning it off station. I put it right on station and went boom, and completely blocked it. And by the way, this is when the induction cooktop was turned off. So when it was off, there was always something on in the station. There was always an electrical signal being blasted out, even when the so-called cooktop wasn't even turned on.
Yeah, so that's one meter that anybody can afford. And, when I drive around strange places, I put the AM radio in my truck on, and I'm just amazed at how much stuff there's in urban environments now and power lines. Anytime you go underneath a 500 kV line, it's going to make your AM radio go nuts. And the other thing it'll demonstrate for you is the Faraday cage effect. If you listen to the radio and you go underneath the metal bridge, you lose your AM station because RF can't get through the superstructure.
Right, you mean or the rebar inside a bridge, because rebar acts the same way as Faraday, right?
Yeah. No, I don't know where we're going, except we're going to have to do something fairly soon. I'm glad I'm as old as I am. I'm not going to live to see it turn around, but I just hope it doesn't get a whole lot worse. I think we're going to have a lot more brain cancer, especially on this right side of your head, because that's where people use their cell phones most often. There's going to be a lot more autism, ADHD, suicide.
I'm going to give a bullet point of 3 or 4 points. I think human reproduction, the combination of physical, electromagnetic, GMO, etc., pollution is going to be very difficult in the next 20 years. So infertility rates will go from 25
to... It's kind of happened already. Stetzer had a bank where all the gals were aborting or couldn't get pregnant, and he filtered it, and they all got pregnant right away after that.
So that's the first thing, is I think fertility rates are going to drop dramatically. Second is married mental illness is going to dramatically increase in ADD and violent crime. I call it a clockwork orange effect. So that's number 2. The third thing you're going to see is you're going to start seeing dysfunctional humans and human families, and the government's going to say they're going to have a need for a police state because they see so much anomalous behavior. They have to control us because people's reptilian brain is taking over because their frontal lobes no longer work. So the rise of the extreme surveillance police state, they're going to try to justify it with the change in people's behavior because they're toxic. Those are the 3 major things I see coming. And they're all avoidable because human biology and the peak of human performance, whether it's IQ or sleeping properly or memory, I think we've already reached it. I think human beings are, without a turning away from this wall of disaster, I think we're in deep doo-doo. I think the human race basically, and the problem is people like you and I that actually point out problems, we're considered conspiracy theorists even though we have scientific equipment that measures it. We're considered troublemakers and iconoclasts, and I think the British have a good term. They call it what do they call it? Curmudgeon. We have curmudgeon syndrome.
Yeah, but we can't get the word out either. I mean, I'm talking to you now, but I can't get on Oprah. I can't get it. They got Dr. Oz and those people selling their stuff. You just can't get on 60 Minutes. You can't get on. I mean, if we could just get people to read my book, for God's sakes, it's 100 pages.
Well, and your website, by the way, your book is called Dirty Electricity.
Right.
And if they go to your website, MILHAM, MILHAM.com, they can see your papers, the latest information, articles. They need to plug in, and then they need to start going after utilities, checking around their home to clear up their home or their business, because these will cause depression, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, literally, if any illness you have...
everything. It'll cause everything.
Yeah.
And, I kind of worry about the current generation of electrical vehicles. They're just going to be a disaster in terms of exposure of people. And
exactly. Now, by the way, I have nutraceuticals and technology I want to mention for a minute. We have the Soma Pulse Schumann Resonance, which is the North Pole equivalent. They discovered helps to set the body frequency pattern straight. It's a 10 hertz Schumann resonance generator. It's a very low Tesla field, not strong at all. It's near the strength of the natural earth. We have, of course, nutraceuticals that buffer the body against free radicals, because we're now discovering that ELN sensitivity has the same gene effects to induce free radicals. So the final common pathway of stress is free radicals. So things like our Nutritrella, cell detox, glutathione, Regenerex, phospholipids to repair damaged cell membranes, minerals to buffer the cells, especially things like magnesium glycinate malate, magnesium taurate, magnesium potassium citrate. In other words, the same things that will protect you against oxidative pollution and ionizing radiation protect you against electropollution. And we can protect the brain and neurotransmitter phenylethylamine levels with things like BH4 biopterin, Cognition Plus, which is all the different nutraceuticals to protect the brain against oxidative stress, and restored vinpocetine, which is our brain power. It turns out that, interestingly, we already found the solution, which is to de-stress and bring in a zone of compensation. It allows you literally to move the person into a zone where they're compensated. They're not detoxified yet because you still have a toxic environment. Next step is to do what Dr. Milham suggests and what we have with less EMF. Get an AM radio. Just walk around your home first. Find out if you got toxic zones. If you do next step, call less EMF and say, I want to get a few of the pieces of equipment so I can actually get some Stetzer meters and start doing something. But I think that
we could do one thing to make an immediate change. It'd be somehow to get the utilities to do what their own think tank told them to do 30 years ago, and that is add increased capacity for the neutral returns. In other words, they could put a fifth wire up or just beef up the return wires and get the stuff out of the ground, because once it's in the ground, it's in everybody. It gets into ground wires, it gets into water pipes, and it not only causes people problems, but what it does is it causes pipes to break, and these gas pipeline exposure, and
because of oxidation, especially if you've got old style iron pipes and other pipes. What it does is cause oxidation at the welding junction lines. So the pipes explode, including gas lines, because the ground electricity basically ionizes or oxidizes the welds of these different pipes, and it causes breaks of water mains, etc. So it's actually bad for business. It's bad for utilities to have dirty electricity because it has physical effects as well.
Stetzer had a company that begged him to help, and he showed that there's a train corporation in Wisconsin. They had stainless steel pipes that were breaking in a year or two, and he had them built a dedicated substation for themselves. You see, the closer you live to the substation, the more crap you got coming down, the dirty electricity and bad stuff you have coming down through the ground to your place. And he had a dedicated substation, so they avoided that. Now their pipes last forever.
Wow. Need to get you back on next month, the month of July, Dr. Sam Milham. So let's do it. It's important to have you back on regularly to remind people of the kind of world they live in. They may not see, smell, or taste it, but it's there, and it's, as they say, it's nibbling away at their cells and their genes, whether they like it or not, and you need to stop the nibbling. The electrical nibbling needs to stop. And we have solutions, technical solutions, nutraceutical and energy solutions. So let's get moving.